Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good morning everyone. Unfortunately, my previous live stream got cut off due to some technical issues when I was doing the stream. So we didn't really quite finish the video and presentation from Dr. Jason Fung on reversing your type 2 diabetes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to continue from where we left off, inshallah. And yeah, we will make comments along the way. And if you haven't watched part 1, the previous live stream, I would highly suggest that you watch part 1 first, and possibly when the sound cuts off you can just end the video there, and then continue on this live stream, or you can join now, and then inshallah I'll try to summarize at the end of the video a few of the points. But I would still recommend you watch the entire presentation. Now, I have included the credits in the description, as well as the original video from Dr. Jason Fung. And I do also have his book, which I highly recommend. You can probably get it from Amazon or any source. You could probably go to charity shops as well. You might find a copy. If you find this copy, I would highly recommend you get it. Yeah, it's very good. Original price is about £15 sterling, but you can probably pick it up. It's been some years since this book was written. It was about 2016 when this book was written, and it kind of goes into the benefits of fasting and the misconceptions and misinformation that's being shared by the mainstream media and medical professions and so on. And Dr. Jason Fung, being a doctor himself, he challenged these ideas, and he succeeded in proving them wrong. So I would highly recommend Dr. Jason Fung's YouTube channel. You can get a lot of content from there, as well as Eric Berg and a few others that speak about the benefits of intermittent fasting, prolonged fasting, and cutting out sugars and carbs, or at least going on a very low carb diet, high protein, high fat diets as well, because your body needs fats for hormone productions and many other things, cell health and so on, but good quality and good fats as well. So it's not just any fat. Trans fats are obviously bad, and so many other things, in processed foods and so on. So you need to cut that out. Of course, you have to cut out sodas and energy drinks and so on. I'm a culprit of that as well. I need to work on that myself, because I do drink a bit of zero sugar energy drinks. So I need to cut that out as well, because it's very unhealthy. It's very harmful. It's not so much just sugar or just glucose, but also the sweeteners that they use are proven also to harm your health. So yeah, you need to work on your own vice. You need to identify what your challenges are, what your vices are, and you need to go and work through them. So instead of just going on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to let you enjoy the rest of this video from Jason, and then I will try to conclude at the end with a few pointers and my personal experience as well, going through a low carb and fasting and so on. Okay, and what worked for me. So I will share that at the end, but I'll let you enjoy the video now, inshallah.
Oh, you're making the blood glucose better, but you're making the type 2 diabetes worse. No wonder you didn't have an effect. And it wasn't shown in just this study. Of course, every other study does the same thing. This was the ADVANCE study, which showed that even after 10 years, you couldn't show any difference to lowering blood glucose by giving more medications. And compare that to this other way of thinking, which is this is an overflow problem, right? The problem is too much insulin, too much glucose. This resulted from dietary changes. We're eating more refined carbohydrates. We're eating more often. We're eating more, which is going to lead to hyperinsulinemia, because insulin is a nutrient sensor. That hyperinsulinemia means you're shoveling all this glucose into the cell, That's going to overflow, your glucose is going to go back, you're going to get this so-called insulin resistance, which is going to cause compensatory hyperinsulinemia, which is ultimately destructive because, of course, shoveling more glucose in is not going to do any good. So this is also going to make some predictions in terms of clinical medicine, which is that you will have fatty liver, you will have obesity. If you lose weight, all of this, if you get rid of that, the overfilled adipocyte, your type 2 diabetes will go away. And yes, it does. It's going to predict that insulin makes things worse, which it does, and it's going to say that pushing glucose from the blood into the body does you overall no good, which is what the insulin did. And of course, every single one of these predictions, from a clinical standpoint, which is the most important because that's what our patients are seeing, is correct. It's not a new concept. This was from the 2011 Banting Lecture, which is the sort of scientific achievement award for the American Diabetes Association. This is the new thinking from 2011. The problem is not that you have a malfunctioning insulin receptor. The problem is that you have too much insulin. That is the underlying problem, too much insulin, which is then linked back to dietary changes, which are, we can track those dietary changes. We know there's been dietary changes since the 1970s. So it's not some mystery as to what's happening. We can track it back and we can see it. And the treatment paradigm, of course, is completely different. Instead of giving more insulin, you want to lower the insulin because you have too much insulin already. And you got to treat the whole body glucose, not just the blood glucose. Moving the glucose from the blood into the liver does you no good because it's still there. It's sort of like taking garbage and just throwing it under the sink. It doesn't do any good. You can't see it anymore, but it still stinks. And that's the problem. When you take this glucose and just put it into your body and turn it into fat, you never got rid of the glucose, so it's still there causing as much damage as if you didn't. So how are you going to lower the glucose? Well, we have drugs that will do that now. And this is, for example, canagliflozin. So as an SGLT2 inhibitor, it's going to make you pee out some glucose. If you pee out the glucose, then your insulin is going to go down, which is what this shows. And that's just sort of basic. And of course, then you get to studies like the EMPA-REG study, which is a study where they used SGLT2s, and what they found was that the A1C lowering was pretty minuscule. In EMPA-REG, the A1C reduction was only 0.4, which is sort of meh. It's like, yeah, it's not very good, right? If you give insulin, you can get those A1Cs down 1%, 2%, 3%. You can't really do that with this. So there's almost no benefit compared to some of the stronger stuff on blood glucose lowering. But the important thing is that you're dumping glucose out of the body. This is all cause mortality, down by like 32%. For a barely noticeable drop in your A1C. But they got the treatment paradigm right, because you're treating the overflow, not the internal starvation. And look, you can look at a drug like semaglutide. So again, it makes you not want to eat. So this is semaglutide. You see total energy intake about 700 calories a day less. And if you're eating less, insulin is a nutrient sensor. If you're eating less, insulin is going to go down. So you see proinsulin and insulin go down with semaglutide, which is not a surprise. And of course, you lose weight. As you lose weight, look at the end organ endpoints. So this is strokes and MI down by 26%. Like, that's a huge benefit for semaglutide that you never saw before with insulin or sulfonylureas or even metformin. Nephropathy, where we've had no new drugs for renal protection since the ACE inhibitors in the 80s, you know, huge protection, like a 36% reduction in new nephropathy, like almost unimaginable benefits that you never used to see. So the point is that you got to treat root causes, okay? So if you have a disease, like a bacteria, it can cause an infection, which causes a fever. This is the symptom. You can't treat it here. If you give acetaminophen for an intra-abdominal abscess, that's symptomatic treatment. It might make you feel better, but it doesn't make the actual disease any better. You actually can't make it better until you treat the cause of the disease. So the same thing occurs in type 2 diabetes and obesity as well. So your problem is hyperinsulinemia. You have the obesity, which is sort of a marker for hyperinsulinemia, which is causing your type 2 diabetes, which is causing your blood glucose to go up. That's the symptom. That's not the disease. So you can't treat the blood glucose because you're not actually treating the disease. You got to treat it here. If they lose weight, their diabetes goes away, and then their blood glucose comes down. What happened was we mistook the symptom for the disease. So for the past 30 plus years, we were treating it symptomatically. We weren't treating the root cause. We were treating what we could see. We were treating the fever and not the infection. The disease was hyperinsulinemia, not hyperglycemia, which is why lowering the blood glucose ultimately did not do any good. And that was the lessons of the Accord, the Advance, the VADT, all those very expensive studies from 15 years ago. And even looking at it from a simplistic standpoint, this is what happens during type 2 diabetes. We know this. Insulin goes way up before your blood glucose goes up. Then, of course, insulin starts to go down and glucose goes up. So when you look at this entire disease process, do you think it's the insulin that's the problem or the glucose that's the problem? And for years we said it was all about the glucose, all about those A1Cs, all about getting the glucose down. And that's why we said, well, we can't treat it. It's chronic, it's progressive. It was never progressive. We were just treating the wrong thing. We should have been treating the hyperinsulinemia. Instead, we're giving insulin. And again, it's exactly the wrong thing. It puts you into this downward spiral because you treat this with insulin. Insulin leads to weight gain, and it's just a vicious cycle. Take more insulin, gain more weight. Gain more weight, type 2 diabetes gets worse. So guess what? You take more insulin. Then you gain more weight. And it keeps going. And this is the way we used to treat it. This is the way I treated it for years. And it wasn't the right thing. Nobody got any better. And then they got their heart attacks, and then they went on dialysis. And we said it was chronic and progressive, there's nothing we can do. But there is something we can do. If you look at the treatments that reverse type 2 diabetes, the bariatric surgery, the fasting, the very low-carb diets, compared to the treatments that lead to progression and worsening, what you see is that these things all increase insulin, and these things all decrease insulin. So there's a very big difference between how you're going to treat it if you understand that the root cause is actually the hyperinsulinemia. It's a disease of too much insulin, and that's why it doesn't work. So then we get to the second problem, which is what's happening in the pancreas, because we know that the insulin levels go way up and then they start to drop. So if it burns out, then yes, it is a chronic and progressive disease. Is it really burned out? So this is called the Counterpoint study. It was done by Dr. Taylor in the UK in 2013. And what he did was put people on a very low-calorie diet, 800 calories a day for 8 weeks. And the fasting blood glucose came right down. So immediately came down from, 9 or 10 to like 6, normal, almost immediately. So very, very good. When you measure the liver fat, you can see this is the sort of normal control. You see that people with type 2 diabetes have fatty livers. That's not a surprise. As you sort of give them very little to eat, they're going to use up some of the fat in the liver, which is good. So over time, the fat in the liver comes down, even down below baseline. And as you get rid of that liver fat, so it's just like emptying out that suitcase, right? You're taking out that excess glucose, then hepatic insulin sensitivity is restored. You don't see the insulin resistance anymore. It goes away because you unloaded that cell. And this is hepatic glucose production. This is baseline. So again, you're getting too much hepatic glucose production. That's the whole problem with insulin resistance. It goes away. So insulin sensitivity goes right back down to normal when you get rid of the fatty liver. But what's happening to the pancreas? Well, turns out that when you look at the pancreas in type 2 diabetics, not only do they have big fatty livers, they have big fatty pancreases as well, because the liver's been exporting all this fat. And you can see it on ultrasound. In fact, a lot of the radiologists around my areas are reporting fatty pancreas all the time now. This is control, and this is the fat, triglyceride content of the pancreas. And over time, so it's a much slower process, but you can see that the fat in the pancreas slowly goes down, but takes a lot more time than the liver, because remember, the liver is right there. When the body wants energy, it's just going to pull it out of the liver because it's right there. It's a lot harder to pull it out of the pancreas because it loaded that cell. And this is hepatic glucose production. This is baseline. So again, you're getting too much hepatic glucose production. That's the whole problem with insulin resistance. It goes away. So insulin sensitivity goes right back down to normal when you get rid of the fatty liver. But what's happening to the pancreas? Well, turns out that when you look at the pancreas in type 2 diabetics, not only do they have big fatty livers, they have big fatty pancreases as well, because the liver's been exporting all this fat. And you can see it on ultrasound. In fact, a lot of the radiologists around my areas are reporting fatty pancreas all the time now. This is control, and this is the fat, triglyceride content of the pancreas. And over time, so it's a much slower process, but you can see that the fat in the pancreas slowly goes down, but takes a lot more time than the liver, because remember, the liver is right there. When the body wants energy, it's just going to pull it out of the liver because it's right there. It's a lot harder to pull it out of the pancreas because it's got to go through this whole process.
Looks like we've lost visual again, unfortunately. I'm going to try just a quick experiment. Just hold on a second. Let me try to pull this video from YouTube and see if this is actually going to work or not. Let's try this. Hold on a second. Let's see if this works. Okay. Okay, so we have that there. If I move this one, if I move this here, like so, let me try to bring the size down. So I'm basically playing the video from YouTube at the moment, the original video. Let's just see if this is going to work. Just the visual a bit, so it's kind of, let's try to put, okay. All right, let's try to put the sound on now.
Insulin resistance, which leads to compensatory hyperinsulinemia, which then drives the glucose in. Now, the problem...
Okay, so I'm just going to go back to the point that we kind of froze at. I think it was roughly about here. Anyway, it's all review, so we can still kind of go back to the same point. It's not an issue, and we can always refresh our memory on the content because it's all great stuff anyway. So yeah, it's all beneficial. Just bear with me until I adjust this a little bit so it's more visually pleasing for everyone that's watching. Okay, I think this looks okay in my opinion. So we're just going to play it from here, and inshallah we can summarize at the end.
Because you're treating the overflow, not the internal starvation. And you can look at a drug like semaglutide. So again, it makes you not want to eat. So this is semaglutide. You see total energy intake about 700 calories a day less. And if you're eating less, insulin is a nutrient sensor. If you're eating less, insulin is going to go down. So you see proinsulin and insulin go down with semaglutide, which is not a surprise. And of course, you lose weight. As you lose weight, look at the end organ endpoints. So this is strokes and MI down by 26%. Like, that's a huge benefit for semaglutide that you never saw before with insulin or sulfonylureas or even metformin. Nephropathy, where we've had no new drugs for renal protection since the ACE inhibitors in the 80s, huge protection, like a 36% reduction in new nephropathy, like almost unimaginable benefits that you never used to see. So the point is that you got to treat root causes, okay? So if you have a disease, like a bacteria, it can cause an infection, which causes a fever. This is the symptom. You can't treat it here. If you give acetaminophen for an intra-abdominal abscess, that's symptomatic treatment. It might make you feel better, but it doesn't make the actual disease any better. You actually can't make it better until you treat the cause of the disease. So the same thing occurs in type 2 diabetes and obesity as well. So your problem is hyperinsulinemia. You have the obesity, which is sort of a marker for hyperinsulinemia, which is causing your type 2 diabetes, which is causing your blood glucose to go up. That's the symptom. That's not the disease. So you can't treat the blood glucose because you're not actually treating the disease. You got to treat it here. If they lose weight, their diabetes goes away, and then their blood glucose comes down. What happened was we mistook the symptom for the disease. So for the past 30 plus years, we were treating it symptomatically. We weren't treating the root cause. We were treating what we could see. We were treating the fever and not the infection. The disease was hyperinsulinemia, not hyperglycemia, which is why lowering the blood glucose ultimately did not do any good. And that was the lessons of the Accord, the Advance, the VADT, all those very expensive studies from 15 years ago. And even looking at it from a simplistic standpoint, this is what happens during type 2 diabetes. We know this. Insulin goes way up before your blood glucose goes up. Then, of course, insulin starts to go down and glucose goes up. So when you look at this entire disease process, do you think it's the insulin that's the problem or the glucose that's the problem? And for years we said it was all about the glucose, all about those A1Cs, all about getting the glucose down. And that's why we said, well, we can't treat it. It's chronic, it's progressive. It was never progressive. We were just treating the wrong thing. We should have been treating the hyperinsulinemia. Instead, we're giving insulin. And again, it's exactly the wrong thing. It puts you into this downward spiral because you treat this with insulin. Insulin leads to weight gain, and it's just a vicious cycle. Take more insulin, gain more weight. Gain more weight, type 2 diabetes gets worse. So guess what? You take more insulin. Then you gain more weight. And it keeps going. And this is the way we used to treat it. This is the way I treated it for years. And it wasn't the right thing. Nobody got any better. And then they got their heart attacks, and then they went on dialysis. And we said it was chronic and progressive, there's nothing we can do. But there is something we can do. If you look at the treatments that reverse type 2 diabetes, the bariatric surgery, the fasting, the very low-carb diets, compared to the treatments that lead to progression and worsening, what you see is that these things all increase insulin, and these things all decrease insulin. So there's a very big difference between how you're going to treat it if you understand that the root cause is actually the hyperinsulinemia. It's a disease of too much insulin. And that's why it doesn't work. So then we get to the second problem, which is what's happening in the pancreas. Because we know that the insulin levels go way up and then they start to drop. So if it burns out, then yes, it is a chronic and progressive disease. Is it really burned out? So this is called the Counterpoint study. It was done by Dr. Taylor in the UK in 2013. And what he did was put people on a very low-calorie diet, 800 calories a day for 8 weeks. And the fasting blood glucose came right down. So immediately came down from, 9 or 10 to like 6, normal, almost immediately. So very, very good. When you measure the liver fat, you can see this is the sort of normal control. You see that people with type 2 diabetes have fatty livers. That's not a surprise. As you sort of give them very little to eat, they're going to use up some of the fat in the liver, which is good. So over time, the fat in the liver comes down, even down below baseline. And as you get rid of that liver fat, so it's just like emptying out that suitcase, right? You're taking out that excess glucose, then hepatic insulin sensitivity is restored. You don't see the insulin resistance anymore. It goes away because you unloaded that cell. And this is hepatic glucose production. This is baseline. So again, you're getting too much hepatic glucose production. That's the whole problem with insulin resistance. It goes away. So insulin sensitivity goes right back down to normal when you get rid of the fatty liver. But what's happening to the pancreas? Well, turns out that when you look at the pancreas in type 2 diabetics, not only do they have big fatty livers, they have big fatty pancreases as well, because the liver's been exporting all this fat. And you can see it on ultrasound. In fact, a lot of the radiologists around my areas are reporting fatty pancreas all the time now. This is control, and this is the fat, triglyceride content of the pancreas. And over time, so it's a much slower process, but you can see that the fat in the pancreas slowly goes down, but it takes a lot more time than the liver, because remember, the liver is right there. When the body wants energy, it's just going to pull it out of the liver because it's right there. It's a lot harder to pull it out of the pancreas because it's got to go through this whole process of reverse cholesterol transport. But what happens to the beta cell? This is the beta cell function. So how much insulin is this beta cell producing? This is baseline, so it's not producing as much insulin as it should be, but as you get rid of that fatty pancreas, it goes back up. So that drop in pancreatic insulin production was not irreversible. That is, the pancreas cell was not burned out. It is in very late stages, but for most people, it was just clogged up with fat, which means that it's a reversible condition. The pancreatic cell has reversed its defect. And so this is the twin cycles hypothesis of type 2 diabetes, which is very important, again, from Dr. Taylor and from the American Diabetes Association. I'm going to take it through it slowly. Essentially, there's two cycles. There's a liver cycle and the pancreatic cycle. And what you have is you have a diet which leads to very high insulin levels. So you're eating all the time, you're eating a lot of refined carbohydrates. This gives you the fatty liver, right? So you have too much insulin, you're shoveling all this glucose into your cell is turning it into fat, you get fatty liver, which leads to this hepatic insulin resistance, which is that overflow, which leads to higher insulin levels. But that's only part of the story, because there's another cycle. As your fat, builds up in the liver, it's going to export it, and you're going to get fatty pancreas. So that's going to clog up your pancreas, and it's going to lead to this reversible beta cell dysfunction, which is, again, going to lead to high blood glucose and insulin production again. So you have a liver cycle, and you have a pancreatic cycle. And what's important about it is that now type 2 diabetes with its two phases are not two distinct diseases. There's not two different pathophysiology. There's not one thing that causes insulin resistance and then some sclerotic process of burnout. Both of these are just diseases of ectopic fat deposition. There's a bunch of fat where it's not supposed to be. It's the same underlying pathophysiology. It's a sort of uniting theory of type 2 diabetes. So how are you going to impact this? Well, the body figured this out a long time ago. If your whole problem is that you have too much glucose leading to too much insulin, well, you dump it out in the urine. Just dump it out. That's why you have a renal threshold of glucose. When your glucose levels goes too high, your body cannot absorb anymore, and you get glucosuria. It wasn't an accident. The kidney is limited to a certain level of blood glucose. Above that, the body is trying to protect itself from this glucose toxicity. And that's what the SGLT2s do. It enhances that sort of protection. And that's why you see such incredible protection in the end organs, in the kidneys, in the heart, for heart failure, for all of that, because you've got the paradigm right. So these two phases are not separate and distinct entities. They're not separate and distinct diseases. That's why they're always linked to each other, because they're actually part of the same disease. It's the same, it's the same underlying process that's causing both of these problems. So again, if you think about the drug treatments, now you can say, okay, well, let's think about two things. First of all, one is that the disease is hyperinsulinemia, not hyperglycemia, and we got to treat the whole body glucose, not the blood glucose. So there's good drugs for that. We know that SGLT2s and GLP-1s are very good. The studies are all excellent. The blood glucose, the effect is sort of meh for SGLT2s. It's pretty good for SGLP-1s. But it decreases the insulin, which decreases your weight, decreases the whole body glucose, and what are the CV outcomes? Almost stuff we've never seen before in terms of renal protection, cardiac protection. If you look at the bad stuff, like just didn't do very much, the DPP-4s and the metformin, they had pretty good blood glucose control. It was not bad, but it was sort of neutral on the whole body glucose. If you take metformin, you're not getting rid of glucose. Remember, with the SGLT2s, you're peeing out the glucose. On the GLP-1s, you're not putting glucose into the system. So the whole body is having less glucose. That doesn't happen with metformin or DPP-4s. So you have pretty good blood glucose control, but pretty neutral on the whole glucose, neutral on the insulin, neutral on the weight. So is there any benefit? Hard to tell. Not very many studies. I mean, you can go back to the UK PDS from like 40 years ago, but nothing really since then. And then there's the stuff that's just ugly, which is like the insulin and the sulfonylureas, TZDs too. But the whole blood glucose goes up because you're giving insulin. People are gaining weight, their insulin's going up, they're gaining weight, and if anything, they're making outcomes worse. Because again, if you're just making things worse, you're gaining weight, your diabetes is getting worse, you're taking more insulin, well, patients knew it. They're saying, hey, what's going on here? All I'm doing is taking more and more and more insulin over these years. And you know what? They were exactly right. That was never the right treatment. What we should have focused on is treating the insulin. Because remember, you can't treat a hyperinsulinemic state with more insulin. It never made sense. It's like treating an alcoholic with alcohol. Like, yes, you will have less DTs, your symptoms will get better, you'll stop shaking, but your disease, your alcoholism, is going to get worse. If you have too much insulin, why would you give more insulin? Do you treat a hyperthyroid patient with more thyroid? I don't think so. So why would you treat a situation where you know you have too much insulin with more insulin and sulfonylureas? And then we wonder why it's not getting better, because the treatment was not correct. And the whole point is that, yes, we have great drugs to do it, but you don't need drugs to do that, because your ultimate root cause is back here in the diet. Because you can use low carbohydrate diets, because we know those reverse type 2 diabetes. And you can use intermittent fasting. If you don't eat, insulin levels are going to go down. The whole thing about insulin, about fasting, is that it's very simple. If you don't eat, your body still needs a source of energy. The most available source of energy is your blood glucose. So it's going to use up that blood glucose. That's it. And so now you can use up that blood glucose. Glucose is going to fall. You didn't need drugs to do it, because you could do it naturally without all of those drugs. Is it fun? No. But is it effective? Yes, it is effective. That's the point. Both of these treatments are free and available. We can do this. We just have to change the way we think about type 2 diabetes. And the key takeaways, really, is that this is a reversible disease. Okay, that much is clear, has always been clear, but because we thought it was all about pancreatic burnout, we called it chronic and progressive, but it wasn't. It's a reversible disease, so that's the target that we should be aiming at for every single one of our patients. Is it going to happen? No, but we should be aiming for that. The key treatments, other than the drugs, is the diet, because that's the root cause of it. You got to treat the cause and not the symptoms. If you treat the symptoms, it's not going to affect the disease process. You treat the diet, they lose weight, that diabetes gets better. Nothing difficult about that. The problem is hyperinsulinemia, which causes the insulin resistance through this overflow mechanism, as opposed to this sort of outdated underfill mechanism, internal starvation, that we all thought it was. This lack of insulin, relative lack of insulin is a term that used to be used. But total insulin was way too high. And you got to treat the whole body glucose. So if you're limiting the glucose that's going into your body, such as with low carbohydrate diets, or you're increasing the burning of the glucose, such as with intermittent fasting, you're going to be able to reverse type 2 diabetes. And with that, we're sort of entering this whole new era of thinking, because if you can get people to lose weight, if you can reverse that type 2 diabetes, you're going to have a huge impact, because if you think about it, there's so many diseases that are impacted. Your cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, strokes, cancer, and then type 2 diabetes, which causes blindness, which causes amputations, which causes infections, which causes kidney disease. So all of those ultimately come back to diet and lifestyle. And we all grew up in an era where we have a certain way of looking at medicine. That is, the acute care theory of, way of looking at medicine is that people get sick, you come to the doctor, I give you a drug, you get better. Worked well with antibiotics. So, you had an infection, I gave you a drug, you're all better. The problem is you can't translate that model into 21st century medicine, where a lot of our diseases are chronic and dietary. Because look at what kills people. Heart disease and cancer, both of them huge risk factors of diet and lifestyle. All of the other diseases, even COVID, we know that if you're overweight, that it takes a much bigger toll on you. So it affects every single facet of medicine, because all of medicine has moved away from sort of acute medicine like infections and, parasites and all this stuff where we needed the right drugs, to this sort of chronic diseases, because that's what affects people now. And you can't just give a drug for a chronic disease. It doesn't work like that. You have to get back to the root problem, which is that weight. And when you can do that successfully, that's when you can make a difference for your patients. And that's how you can reverse type 2 diabetes.
Okay, thanks for watching. It's an excellent video by Jason Fung. I really appreciate the support from my regular subscribers, El Blue and Green Apple. Iman Noor as well has been commenting quite a bit on podcasts. I hope you guys are enjoying, and I really appreciate all the guests that come on my programs. The very recent ones, because it really means that they truly believe in my project, my vision, and these are the true friends that I have. All the people that appeared on my channel in the past are my real friends, and all the people that supported this channel by leaving comments and encouragements are my true friends. So this project has actually showed the true colors of the people around me, the people that claim to be my friends and claim to care for me, and those who truly care, because it shows when you start a project or something and you see the people gathering around you and encouraging you and so on. When I started dieting a few months back, and I was almost 130 at the beginning of this year, 2023, a lot of people said it's impossible. You need to go see a doctor, you need to go into medication and all that stuff. And I had a lot of these health issues, but I decided to basically, at a point when I felt too sick of being sick and tired, I just said I have to do something about it, and I took the natural route, which was fasting and doing regular exercise and very mild exercise, just walking as much as I can every day. I started with a goal of doing 10,000 steps. Some days I walk more, some days I walk less. And I was like that for a while until I did a challenge with Mr. Tamkin Riaz at the beginning of August. And I was roughly about 107 or just under 107. And alhamdulillah, today I'm 81 kilograms. This came by praying to Allah to help me succeed, because ultimately everything starts with supplication to the Creator, because He has control of everything and He gives you that willpower to persevere. And secondly, I took action, and this is what Islam teaches as well: is you have to take action. It's not just words. You don't just expect miracles. You have to do some sort of activity. So I started a prolonged fast, which is basically not eating anything and just drinking liquids. Now, of course, I did make mistakes along the way, like I was taking coffee, I was taking sugary drinks, I took, you know, many sort of things like these zero sugar energy drinks as well, which contain sweeteners which also spike your insulin. And I had to adjust my fast as I was going along, and some of these things can take you out of the fasting state as well. So I had to adjust. I had to learn from mistakes. Just like everything else in life, you have to learn from your failures and mistakes, and try to perfect your strategy. And that's what I did, and my body started reacting positively. The weight started to come down, and most importantly, the body fat started to go down, not so much the protein. Of course, I lost some muscle in the process, but the vast majority of what I lost was body fat. And like I said to you, you have to also do some sort of physical activity. And therefore, I was going more regular when I started, and then gradually I started to stagnate, at least going a couple of times to 3 times a week to the gym, and just do some basic bodybuilding exercises. And I intend to increase that intensity and increase the time I spend in the gym and frequency once I start going back to eating regularly. I've been now about almost 70 days prolonged fasting, and now I'm going to start at some point to wind down. So I'll start to eat, but I'll start to only consume food that is beneficial, such as high protein, high fat diets, avocados, healthy fats, so good fats. There's obviously harmful fats like saturated fats and processed, ultra processed food. All these things are harmful for the body. Carbohydrates, you can take healthy carbohydrates, of course, because it's an anabolic. Uh, you know, it's like carbohydrates is actually anabolic, so it works with your body, and it can help you with your bodybuilding as well. So it's important, but you have to do exercise. You can't just eat carbs, eat lots of bananas, eat lots of pasta and all that stuff, and not do some really high intensity exercise, because you need to burn that off. And if the most effective way is to burn body fat, the best kind of exercise is to walk rather than run. If you're running and you're doing high intensity, you're burning glucose. So if your target is to access your body fat and start burning fat, then you should do some mild exercise, like weightlifting, walking for a long period of time, doing 10,000, 20,000 steps, that kind of stuff. That will be more effective in lowering your body fat, accessing your body fat to burn your ketones. And if you want to burn sugar, or you're eating carbs, or you're doing an athletic activity where you're going to perform at a very high heart rate and high intensity, then at that point, yes, you can have a high carb diet, or you can take some carbs just before you start your athletic activity. That's all fine. But for most people, they're not that physically active. Therefore, they need to have a very low carb, or cut down the carbs completely and avoid all sugary drinks in order for the body to go into autophagy and to start using up your ketones. Ketones are the energy source that's stored as in body fat. So once your body fat cell starts to break down, you start producing ketones, and that's really useful. It's useful energy source for the brain, for your organs, and so on. And your body needs that, and you feel a lot more better in the process. So yeah, alhamdulillah for that. I mean, I couldn't have done anything without the will of Allah for this, and this is why I am constantly drumming in, Islam and so on, and the belief, because Allah's benefited me a lot. I have a great debt with my Creator because He's helped me a lot in my life, and He saved me. He gave me so many chances to change and reform and become a better human being. He helped me in my weight loss journey, alhamdulillah. It's not over yet. I'm still trying to drop. I'm currently roughly about 81 kilograms now from the peak of almost 130. But my aim is to go into the 70 kg mark, so about 77, 75 kilograms, and then start to increase my muscle mass, which will be the next kind of challenge, health challenge that I'll be working on. Now, for this channel, I just want to give you an idea. I want to be doing more reaction videos, more on technical videos, health, religion, all these things. I want to start creating content around that. But also at the same time, I want to share some of my technical knowledge as well as refresh my memory, because, as you're teaching, you're preparing something to share with someone, you need to also refresh your knowledge. So I want to also refresh my knowledge in programming and RISC-V, computer architecture, that kind of stuff, cybersecurity, financial technology, blockchain technology, that kind of stuff, cryptography. So all these things, I want to refresh my memory and start developing more in that level. And the reason why is because there's lots of careers, lots of opportunities, and I'm constantly being approached on LinkedIn and other platforms to help people get a job. And I always tell them that you need to improve your skill. You need to keep sharpening that tool. Don't just be satisfied, and don't be in a comfort zone and sit there. You have to constantly be evolving. You have to constantly be learning new skills. You have to be constantly a student for the rest of your life. It's never too late, and you're not too old to be a student. You have to be, specifically if you're a Muslim. If you're a Muslim, you're ordered to be a student from the cradle to the grave. You have to constantly be learning and sharing, constantly be giving, not be a taker. Okay, so this is the Islamic way of life. If you're a Muslim, you have to be like that. If you're not, you can adopt some of these beneficial characteristics, and I do also highly encourage you to pursue an education path, and forget about all these YouTubers and entrepreneurs and all these stories that tell you that all the successful people out there are uneducated and they didn't complete their university degree and so on. The fact is that they're actually reading more, they're studying more than someone that's actually studying at university, because they read a lot of books, they immerse themselves in knowledge, they're constantly studying. And what they don't tell you is they actually study in the background. Even if they didn't complete their studies academically at a particular university when they started, they're constantly actually studying and doing other forms of courses and training programs. So it's not like that. As well as they recruit people that have great minds. So it's not just what you see in the media, because most of the time, a lot of the successful people out there and a lot of the entrepreneurs, they only show you one aspect of their life, the successes, the happiness, the victories. They don't show you the failures. Okay, now what I intend to do in my channel is I will share with you my success and failures, but so much more in when things went wrong, when I lost money, when I lost hundreds of thousands of pounds, just like that, in minutes and days and weeks. So I will share with you the mistakes so you can learn from, so you can avoid the mistakes I did. I don't want you to suffer like I suffered. I want you to have a head start when you're getting started in your entrepreneurial journey, when you're getting started in your diet journey, your weight loss journey. I want you to have that head start. You don't have to keep trying, these fad diets and and don't go for all these drugs and stuff like that. Try to do everything in the most natural, pure, clean way. Avoid taking any sort of drug that claims that it will help you lose weight and that kind of stuff, because all they're after is really selling the products. So always go for the most natural route. Always try to access organic food when you can. Of course, some people are less fortunate than others, but invest more in your health, invest more in your education. This is investing in yourself, this kind of investments, and cut down on investing in clothes. You know, I'm not saying to you to walk around without clothes. You know, get some good clothes, but don't go for brands. Don't go for the image of, you know, aesthetics from the outside, what people's opinion of you, brands and so on. So just dress something simple and basic, and spend most of your money, whatever money you have, invest it in food, good quality food, and good quality education, and in income generating assets, just like property, land, you know, commodities. Invest in these sort of things in the stock market, but don't invest in companies that have debts, highly leveraged companies. So these are the sort of things that I will be sharing on my channel, inshallah. And I'll be maybe going into one project or two, maybe one of the challenges that I will set on my on this channel is, you know, starting a business from scratch, and then maybe generating a passive income of just £100, something very small, something manageable, so everyone can duplicate and do the same. And then we can scale up the business to generate £1,000 a month, and then 10, 100,000, and build it up in that way. So I will take you through the stages, inshallah, all for free. There's no cost at all, and I hope you can benefit, and I hope you can actually achieve a lot more than I've achieved, and you're more successful than me in this world and in the next, inshallah, because I love you all for the sake of Allah. Now to the video, back to Jason Fung, just to stay on the topic. He covered a lot of good bases, a lot of content here, and the key point that he mentioned and he emphasized is when you are a diabetic, the issue is you have high insulin in your blood, but your body isn't absorbing the energy. Because your cells are all wrapped in fat and they're blocked. So it's very difficult for the glucose to enter the cell. Therefore, your body, when you have a high amount of glucose in your body, it starts to produce insulin. But yet, your body isn't receiving the energy that it needs, because it's all clogged with fat because of the obesity condition. So what happens? The doctors prescribe you with more insulin. So you have now a lot of insulin, and insulin is used to store energy as a form of body fat, to convert carbohydrates and store it as body fat. You need insulin. So insulin is the transporter that will store it into your fridge or freezer or whatever, and it becomes body fat in your body. So it's a vicious circle. What you're doing, you're increasing more of this type of hormone in your blood, which then increases your body fat. It makes you even more fatter. It increases your body's fat storage. So it's a vicious cycle. What you should be doing is fasting, reducing the body fat so your body can access your body fat, and then that way it would lighten that clogging around your arteries, your organs, your visceral fat, and as well as the blockage around the cells. So now when you do eat healthy, your body can benefit from the source of energy that's coming into your body. And when you do get that spike, it will go down eventually, the insulin spikes. So what you should be doing is eating food with a very low insulin index. You know, it wouldn't raise your insulin too high, such as proteins and fats. That's what happens. So this is energy sources that your body can benefit from, and it won't raise your insulin too high. But you need to work through it. So the first thing, you have to take massive action. You have to cut out your carbs, cut out your sugars. Not every time you feel, you know, you need energy, you start eating, because then your body will just go into that vicious cycle. You have to break that cycle. If you find yourself in a hole, you stop digging. Otherwise, you're going to get even deeper in a hole. Makes sense, right? You know, you can take that same concept in business. You could take it same concept in your health as well. So you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. Just stop digging. You're gaining weight and you're uncontrollable, and you have this addiction with sugar and all that stuff, and you have these cravings to eat pasta and high carbs and stuff that has no nutrition to you for you at all. Just stop. Just press the brakes. Stop your vehicle. Stop eating. Shut your mouth for a while and just wait. Eventually your body will switch from relying on you to provide it with food to accessing the stored resources that it has, which is your body fat, your white fat that you have in your body. Will start taking that white fat, taking it and pushing it to become brown fat. And if you want to accelerate that process, I know a lot of you might not be brave enough to do this, have a cold shower, because the cold shower will start to convert the white fats into brown fats, which are much easier to access and much easier to burn. So you will start losing your body fat a lot quicker, because it will start to convert that white fat to brown fat, okay, which is quicker to burn. And also cold showers have a lot of benefits for you. Health benefits, therapeutic, reducing inflammation. It loses your stress levels. It has a lot of miraculous benefits. Also in Islam, you know, the whole concept of cold is actually beneficial for you. In fact, one of the du'as says, you know, Allah, wash away my sins with ice and cold water and stuff. So it's kind of like hinting you, you know, you're washing away your sins, but you're also washing away you're detoxing the body. So it has this benefit of, you know, you're washing away, just like you wash away, you know, impurity with the ice and cold water and water and so on. It's kind of telling you, maybe there's also another benefit. So do I like you wash away the sins in ice and cold water? Also, you wash the detox in your body. So you're detoxing your body, as well as you know, you detox your body through autophagy when you go through the fasting process. But that's going to take at least 3 days to switch into that autophagy for most of us. Some people can do it quicker, some people could do it a little bit slower, but on average, aim for 72 hours prolonged fast, so you can get some of the benefits of autophagy and fasting and reversing your diabetes and so on. Do that for 3 days, see the results. If you can keep going. I went on for I think now almost 70 days, alhamdulillah, and I'm gonna now start to wind down slowly, or perhaps feed one day and then go for another prolonged fast, then do that and just keep doing that until I reach my ideal weight, which is about 77 kilograms, 75 kilos. So I'm aiming at that, and then I will start to increase muscle mass, inshallah, by the will of Allah. This will happen as well, and I will share my success story. But I'm still in a journey. I haven't reached the destination yet. And success is not a destination, it's a journey. You keep going, you keep trying to work harder, contribute, become a better version of yourself while you're still alive. To basically make yourself the best version of yourself in this life. So then ultimately you can become more beneficial to others. It's not about you, it's not about me, it's not about anything. It's about how you can benefit others in this world. So this is what it's all about, you know. Barakallah for you know, Jason Fung, he's doing a great job. Also Eric Berg, a great doctor as well, always speaks honesty and says the truth as it is. They're not influenced by pharmaceutical companies or the mainstream and so on. They say the facts, they give the facts, they give the science behind it. I've benefited a lot in the past from them, and so many other doctors, too many to mention here, who stand up for the truth, and may Allah guide them to Islam, who the ones are not Muslims, and show them that a lot of what they're doing is very Islamic, and I have to say this, they're better than the Muslims that we have today, because those people they took Islam as some sort of an entitlement, that I was born into this, so they kind of like inherited Islam. It's like a culture, Islam culture, but they're not real Islam. It hasn't entered their heart. Just like that, they can leave Islam. I had one friend who was studying medicine, failed in his last year, and then he decided to leave Islam because he failed in his last year in an exam. And he said, "Why did Allah do this to me?" Complete nonsense. The guy is ignorant. He is illiterate. He's a fool for doing that because he had no knowledge in Islam. When I spoke to him about very basic stuff, he didn't know anything. So it showed me that he didn't actually look into this. He didn't really reflect on the religion. But alhamdulillah, from a very young age, about 13, I started asking questions. Why am I Muslims? Why are we Muslims? Who is Muhammad, peace be upon him? Who's Jesus? Who's Moses? And I started reading. I started reading the Bible. I read the Torah. I started speaking to Jewish friends. I started speaking to Christian friends. I started speaking to priests. I spoke to people, Hindus and other religions, with an open mind, listened to everyone, and then I evaluated everything, looked at all the text, looked at all the stuff that made sense, what other people have said, and what actually was claimed to have been said from the Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, like the Red Letter Bible and so on. So I started looking into all that stuff. I made contacts with Islamic Propagation Center. They sent me a lot of material, and then I started understanding, why am I a Muslim? Someone asks you, why do you believe in what you believe? I can give them hard, solid, concrete evidence. So much so that I am so convinced that every atom in my heart, every atom in my body has La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. I'm so convinced it's very difficult for me to convince me otherwise. It's impossible. Not even difficult, impossible. I've seen the signs so clear, so crystal clear, that I'm certain. And I know 100,000 billion %, if anybody reads the Quran, if anyone reads the Quran, this is a challenge. You read the Quran, you read at least 10 pages. Just read it from, just open it randomly and start reading 10 pages. And see how you feel at the end of it. After 10 pages. And if you can't even do 10 pages, read 5 pages. Just see the effect. You will feel, I guarantee you, you will feel that the Creator, your Creator, is speaking to you. As if this message was sent specifically for you. Because that's how I felt. It completely made me jump back. I said, whoa, this is not like any book. When I read the Bible, I can see clearly it was written by a man. I read any other book, it's clearly written by an author, written by a man. But when you read the Quran, it's miraculous. It enters your heart. It just shoots into your heart. You feel that God Almighty is speaking to you, and the message was specifically, sent down just for you. And everybody feels that. It's amazing. And even more amazing when you actually hear it in its original language of Arabic. And if you don't understand Arabic and so on, there are Qurans online where you can actually hear the Arabic and the translation. The translation is not so accurate, but it's still effective. It will give you like a general idea of what the words mean. There are words like, for example, they say no compulsion in religion. It's not, the word deen is not just religion, it's way of life. Way of life. You might have someone that professes to be a Muslim, but his way of life is un-Islamic. It's not very Islamic. He's very secular. He's implementing a way of life which belongs to someone else. It's not part of Islam. So he's not someone who can say, I'm following the deen of Islam. He could say, I'm following a culture. I'm following a culture that I was born in, an Arab culture, Middle Eastern culture. But that's not Islam. Islam way of life. Islam is a complete way of life. That's what it's all about. And therefore, you can't force people to your way of life, and they should not also impose their way of life, their woke way of life, on you. They want to live that life, fine. Stay away from me. Don't try to impose your way of life on me. I'm not imposing my way of life on you. I did my research. I looked into everything thoroughly to be sure of what decisions I'm making, what direction I'm going to take in my life, what's my purpose in life, why am I here, what role and responsibility. That's the most intelligent thing to do. If each person should ask themselves, how did I get here? Where am I going? What's my purpose? What's my duty? If you start a job, first thing you should know, what am I being hired for? Am I in sales? Am I a software engineer? What am I doing? Am I cleaning? Am I the guy that's going to make tea and coffee? What's my roles and responsibility part of this job? That's the most common sense thing to do. What are you being hired for? What's your job? Because if you're hired to work in customer service, or to you're working in a supermarket, and the manager's saying to you, we're hiring you to be a cashier to serve the customers, and you're nowhere near the customers all the time. You're stacking shelves, and there's a long queue, at the tills, whatever, and you're not serving the customers. The manager will say to you, "What are you doing? I hired you so you can serve the customers. There is someone else that's stacking the shelves. So why are you stacking the shelves for? So you know what I mean? So you have to understand what is required from you. Otherwise, you're not going to get paid. The manager might sack you. All right. Now, I'm not saying managers and all that stuff, but now Allah, the Creator, created you for a purpose. And this health is a trust from the Creator. Your body is a trust. Your family are a trust to you. And you have to answer for all this. I gave you this body, I gave you all this health, I gave you all the tools and knowledge. What did you do with it? Okay? Stay away from all these nonsense ideas where people say we only live once. I just want you to enjoy life. This life is just about procreation, living like animals. Forget about those people. These people are losers. These are the losers. If you want to be a winner, you want to be successful, and you want to be someone that's beneficial to society, stay away from the losers. Cut the losers out of your life. Okay? Guide them, give them direction, but if they want to stay as losers, they want to continue smoking, whether it's cigarettes or shisha, which is even more haram. Shisha is forbidden in Islam. A lot of people, you see a lot of these Arabs in shisha lounges and smoking shisha and stuff. It's the worst sin. It's worse than even drinking alcohol. It's more of a sin than drinking alcohol. Alcohol is forbidden in Islam, but shisha is 10 times more forbidden. And you see more Arabs smoking shisha. You see Arabs smoking cigarettes. Even during Ramadan, they do it. They do it openly. And what did Allah tell us? What did Allah say? He said He can forgive all sins, except the sins that you do openly. And what do most Arabs, most Muslims, most people that profess to be Muslims do openly as an open sin? Shisha, smoking. Yes, some of them drink openly as well, but the vast majority, when they do these kind of sins, they do it in secret. But what do they do openly? What do they boast about? What do they invite their friends? They invite their friends to do more haram with them. Subhanallah. So brothers, if you're one of them, change yourself. Especially the people that are into dawah. Be careful. Don't be a hypocrite. You need to reform yourself. Become a better example for mankind. So I hope you get this message. I hope you can benefit from Jason Fung. I've left all his detail below in the description, and I do apologize again for the mishap that we had with the live streams, and I did two parts, but we had some technical issues. But I hope it was not much more clearer, directly being played on YouTube rather than using Real Player, which sometimes malfunctions and causes all sorts of issues as well. And do give me a recommendation, give me a constructive criticism. If I've said anything that upset you for some reason, come back to me. Some people, they do come back and they say, they appreciate what I've said in the past and the challenge that I did with Tamkin, and they've started their own journey of weight loss. So they've told me they're not doing exactly the same thing. They're doing maybe eating a healthy diet, cutting down on carbs. They're doing their own sort of the thing that works for them. So that's fine. Everyone understands their body. Everyone wants to progress at a different pace. They don't have to necessarily drop a large amount of weight quickly. They could do it gradually. As long as you have your plan and your target, keep going, And I wish you all success, and I hope you do achieve your goal and persevere. But then I get the odd person that's negative, or they're just happy the way they are, and they say, I'm happy, they're happy for being fat, they accept their body. Fine. You're not going to improve. You're not going to lose weight. You're not going to be rich if you're happy the way you are. You're not going to be successful if you're happy the way you are. If you're happy the way that you are with losers and broke people and failures and people that have no aim in life and just a burden on society, and continue playing a victim, continue complaining about pains and aches, and my back hurts, my leg hurts, my tummy hurts, I've got headaches, and you're still complaining, even though it's like imaginary. A lot of these people imagine they have things, and they keep playing that they play that role of being a victim. And I've seen this. I've seen them. They're acting this way in front of people. When people are not around, suddenly they've got all this boost of energy. They're running around and moving, doing things, watching TV like that. But once someone's around, oh, my back's hurt. Oh, my leg. You see it straight away. They switch. So I've seen this kind of people. They like to be the victim. They like people to feel sorry for them. So you have to be careful of these people, and don't be one of them. Be someone who's a leader, inspiring, and so on. A lot of times I had issues when I walked. I had a little accident, my ankle twisted, my knee hurted for a bit. I had lots of stuff. I had my knee swollen for a bit. I didn't complain. Nobody knew that I was going for anything. I was always showing, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. I kept pushing because I want to show people persevere. You're not going to sit there and cry like a baby. That's not a man. A man takes it and keeps pushing. Takes the pain and keep pushing. Increases that pain tolerance. His tolerance to stress and that kind of thing. Keep pushing because you have a clear target. When you have a clear target, you're not going to stop for trivial matters. You're not going to fight with every trivial battle. You're not going to have time to respond to negative people or losers. If they don't want to move, leave them behind. If they started with you in the gym, for example, and they said every Tuesday we're going to meet in the gym, and so, and then suddenly they said, oh, I don't think exercise, I'm not cut out for the gym, or there's people that lose weight without doing exercise and all that nonsense. I have a friend that he's lost weight, but he's lost his weight by smoking. His muscles are like shrinking. His bones are very frail. He has very bad lungs and he's just smoking. He said to me he's losing weight and he's smoking a lot. He's just basically does a lot of smoking. So this is a very bad way of losing weight. Yes, you would lose weight because you will lose a lot of muscle, which you need. But eventually your body will start reversing because you need muscle to increase your metabolism. So if your metabolism, if your muscles are reduced, your body needs less energy to function because your muscles need energy. So now when you start eating, you're going to blow up. And that's why you get some people that are smokers and they look very skinny. And then suddenly they explode. They become very fat. Or they have all sorts of issues, lung cancer, heart attacks, and or brain damage and so on. So it's just a completely foolish thing to do. You adopt an unhealthy lifestyle to lose weight. You want to do something positive, but you do it the wrong way. So you can't use cigarettes. You can't go on an alcohol diet, just drinking alcohol. What's this madness? Are people this dumb? You know, come on, wake up, people. Adopt a healthy lifestyle. If you don't want to diet, if you don't want to do fasting, eat healthy. Cut out the carbs, just like Jason Fung said in the video. Low carb diet as well can work. Of course, a different pace, like I've mentioned. You want quicker results, and I mean quicker, not in days, maybe a couple of months, 2, 3 months, kind of quick speed. Then you do a fast. Do intermittent fasting, fast for 16 hours, eat for 8 hours, or fast for 20 hours and eat in a 4-hour window. That's fine. Or, do 2, 3 days prolonged fast and then have 1 day feasting and then keep doing that. So, and I have a friend as well who does water fast for 3 days every month. So every month he doesn't eat anything, just drinks water for just 3 days, and then he goes back to eating normally, and he just does that every month. And he's very athletic, he's very fit, and he's a bodybuilder and everything like that. So these sort of people we can learn from. And some people, they do a dry fast for 24 hours. So they don't drink water or eat or do anything for 24 hours. And apparently dry fasting has benefits, but it's not recommended for an extended period of time because your body does still need water. So you shouldn't stay out of water for more than a day or two maximum. And you should start drink some water because you need that for your body as well. But yeah, that also pushes the body into recycling mode and break it down, body fat, because a big percentage of the fat cell is actually liquid, it's actually water. So when that cell bursts, water is released. So you do get water, you still get water from fat cells. That's why in Ramadan, we Muslims, we fast, we don't drink water, we don't eat, but still you do go to the loo and you still have water in your body because your body's fat cells are getting broken down and water is being released internally. So you have some storage of water in your body, hydration, and that's used up as well. So it's not like a dangerous thing. So yeah, the body can survive for a couple of days without water anyway, so that's fine. And no one's going to be fasting 48 hours dry fast. People do that, but no one, in the majority of people won't. They will usually maximum say 20 hours dry fast, and then they break their fast in Ramadan. So that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I've said this before, but thanks very much for bearing until the end, until I share my little feedback and my opinion and my advice. And of course, if you're happy with where you are, good luck with your life. I wish you all the best. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care.